Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline is Associated Press college football writer Ralph Russo. Ralph, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Thanks for having me, guys. How are you?
We are fantastic. In fact, we're going to start with a non-Big 12 question, if you're okay with that.
Oh, sure. Fire away. I'll take your poll question. I like your poll question, too,
Let's do that. Okay, let's start with the poll question. What's more likely, BYU gets a Big 12 invite or the football team wins 9 games against that brutal schedule?
Yeah, I think the schedule is what tips me. I think they got a better chance of being invited to the Big 12. And that's not to say that I would never put a percentage chance on it because I'm still not exactly sure what the Big 12 wants. I'm not sure the Big 12 knows exactly what it wants when it's looking for an expansion partner, and there's still going to be obviously a few issues with the TV partners as far as how this goes forward. But the more and more I talk to people and read things and try to get some sense of where expansion is going, the more it sounds like BYU would be a good fit, but I say that tentatively, and that schedule is not getting that schedule's a bear, so I'll go under on the 9 wins.
And we'll dive into some more of that in a moment, but the Associated Press came out with its top programs ever, top 100, I believe it was. BYU came in at number 34. What did you think of the top 100 and BYU coming in at that spot?
Well, listen, it was a fun project, and I know, there's no doubt we do things like that to be a little provocative as far as getting fans engaged and getting people to go, man, how can you have so-and-so at number 1, and how can you have them at number 5, and we should be higher and we should be lower. But to me, the interesting part of the project was sort of diving into this 80 years of poll information, 1,103, I think it was the total amount of polls, 1,031, something in that ballpark. I can't remember now. And I didn't do most of that really heavy lifting. I just made it look pretty at the end. But, we came up with the parameters. We were looking for a formula, and I really pushed for some type of very simple formula that would reward consistency over a long period of time, probably emphasizing that even a little more than the championships, which is why Alabama ended up number 4 and Ohio State ended up number 1. And, one of the things that I think popped out for people was if you look at BYU at number 34, BYU at 34 is ahead of most of the Big 12 schools, just to sort of give you a perspective of what BYU's consistency has been throughout the years. And I think, again, that's what we were trying to measure. And for me, the fun part of the project was looking through all that data and sort of spotting some trends in college football in general and seeing where programs peaked and valleyed and spiked and fell off.
I think it's a fantastic testament to what BYU football, largely under Lavelle Edwards, Gary Croton, Bronco Mendenhall, and now Kalani Sitake has done over 40 years. I mean, they've been one of the top 5 most winning programs in 4 decades. That said, I feel like that has zero to do with what the Big 12 wants to do. Does a legacy factor in your mind affect the Big 12's expansion decision at all?
I think it does, but here's why. Not necessarily for the obvious reasons. I think there definitely is a component here that says we want a school that is going to play competitive football. This is a school that has a history of doing that. And to tie that into college football at large and in general, if you look at college football, if you have been good, there's a good chance you will be good. There's not as much parity. Like, we like to think of college football as a sport that has become, injected more parity throughout the years. But the brands matter, and the brands sort of, to a certain degree, dictate how much success you'll have. So when you tie BYU's success over a long period of time to its brand, and it's a notable brand, it's a brand with a long reach and a national fan base, and again, this consistent high-level play, you bring in that program with the idea that A, it brings a good name and a good brand, and B, we are sure that it can compete at this level. We're not going to bring in this school and then, it just happens to have a good coach right now. That coach is going to leave, and that program is going to fall apart and break under the weight of better competition.
You don't have to subtly mention Memphis like that, but anyway, you tweeted May 22nd the following: woke to my kid and her friend watching a show called Studio C on BYUtv, and if this doesn't get BYU into the Big 12, not sure what will. I love it.
It was, I'd never heard of the show, and she and a couple of her friends were having a sleepover, and I found it to be, obviously, listen, they're only 10 years old, so it certainly wasn't inappropriate humor, but it was also like witty and bright enough and sort of sharp and edgy enough that it drew me in. So it just sort of caught me off guard. I'm like, what is this? And it's pretty funny, and it didn't, and good job by BYUtv. So I was being a little tongue-in-cheek, but I was pretty impressed.
Well, now you've been exposed to what happens in Studio C, and we are in Studio B with Ralph Russo, Associated Press college football writer since 2005. All right, how about this question? And it seems like the $20 or $25 million question, depending on who you ask. How many teams will the Big 12 expand by, and when do you think it will happen?
Okay, I think this will play out relatively quickly. One way or the other, they will decide we're going to do this. Here's what we're looking at. Here's who we will bring in, and they're going to move on from there. Or I think there's still at least a chance. The Big 12 is nothing if not non-committal, and I think that they left themselves enough wiggle room to even still back out of this. If you're going to do this, it's essentially a money grab, right? They get the pro rata contract, pro rata fees from their television partners, which means that they're going to bring in two. That means $25 million each, give or take, $20 to $25 million each more. You bring in four, times it by four. I mean, my sense is if you're going to do something because it's a little bit of a money grab, well, you might as well grab the most money and bring in four. I could see if the television networks push back, maybe a way to appease them is to say, listen, we're only going to bring in two. That only costs you an extra $40 to $50 million, and maybe we can negotiate some other things in here too. I think, I was asked this a while back, and I dismissed it at the time, but I think it might be more relevant. I also wonder if BYU already being part of ESPN's television product, a television partner, helps in a sense BYU, because now it might not necessarily ESPN might not look at it as new money. In other words, if you bring BYU in, now we're just putting that money toward the Big 12. So I don't know if I really answered your question. I've been of the opinion that if you're going to do it, you're going to bring in four, and I think if you're going to do it, you want this process wrapped up by October. I just don't think there's any reason why it needs to linger, because you know about these schools. You probably have a dossier on all of them. They've been lobbying for over a year, so there's really no reason why you need to do a deep dive. You've probably got most of the information you need.
When you look at BYU's schedule, and we talked about how tough it would be to win 9 games, what would be a nice number for BYU to get to where nationally maybe it's like, okay, that was a good season for BYU, and look how tough that schedule was?
Listen, I think I'm looking at it now, and I don't think 9 is crazy, because there's definitely enough sort of swing games on here. And Arizona is not necessarily a loss, right? I mean, I think of all the tough games on BYU's schedule, I don't see any of them other than maybe at Michigan State, where I think BYU really, I shouldn't say can't, is going to have a really, really hard time winning that game. That's a really good Michigan State team on the road. That one looks like a loss to me. Almost all these other games, they could beat Arizona. They could beat Utah. They could certainly beat Mississippi State at home. Mississippi State breaking in a new quarterback. I don't see Boise as being a game you can't win. West Virginia at a neutral site, that might be a little tough. You're coming all the way across the country. So I'm thinking, I don't think 9 is impossible because there's enough swing games there, though I do think playing all those tough teams will wear you down a little bit. 7-5 is a pretty nice season. I don't think would it be anything to be ashamed of. But if you hit 8, I think you look at that season with that schedule and go, okay, new coach too, that schedule, 8 wins. You got to be feeling pretty good. I don't know if that's going to satisfy all the BYU fans, but I think 8-4 sounds pretty good to me.
Ralph, it's been great to talk to you about everything from Big 12 expansion to Studio C to BYU's schedule in 2016. We really appreciate the time and look forward to doing it again soon.
Thanks. Anytime, guys.